possible. And if you got a bottle of the brand new Bottled in Bond, I want everybody to say, if you got it, say, yes, I got it.
Got it.
Yes, I got it.
Got it.
Yes, I got it.
Wonderful. So, Nick, I'm going to tell you something. Every time we start these things, I always start by asking, what are you drinking tonight? But we know what you're drinking tonight because you just released this. And this is also one of the first times that many of us are going to be drinking the same thing. And it is also the first time that many of us are going to be drinking the same thing for the first time. So it's sort of a fun little thing we're going to do here right now just to get us started. So I'd like everybody who has the Bottled in Bond to open it up. Okay. Here we go. Got to make sure we pour a nice pour here. Very nice. Close the bottle so I don't knock it over. And I want everybody to start off saying cheers to Nick and to Whiskey Acres. Cheers.
Cheers.
Everybody's saying very good.
Getting there.
Oh, Lynn, you didn't take off the plastic at that time. We were joking around about that.
We just shooed our company away. We were outside with company, and I told her we couldn't have her around once this started unless she wanted to be part of it.
Well, don't hurt yourself with that knife, Lynn. Don't hurt yourself.
She looks like she's moving with expertise, though.
She knows her way around a knife. She does know her way around a knife and opening a bottle.
She certainly does.
Yes.
Cheers.
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 So,
Cheers.
damn, Nick, this is delicious. Yeah.
Thank you.
That's nice.
Mm.
That's
Oh, it's got a nice nose to it. It warms, very warming. It's very, very nice. Enjoying it. We'll talk more about it a little bit later. Everybody, if you could all, Eric, if you could mute everybody except for you and me and Nick right now, I'd appreciate that.
Yep.
And welcome everybody to episode 12. I can't believe we're on our 12th episode already of the Enthusiastic Whiskey Hobbyist Interviews. Tonight we are honored to have with us Nick Nagele from Whiskey Acres. Nick, welcome. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. My honor and
Our
pleasure.
Thank you very much. So we started these right after Whiskey Week was canceled. When Whiskey Week was canceled due to COVID, this is something that I'd been thinking about doing for years. And I just looked at this as an opportunity to stay in touch with people and have a little bit of fun, drink a little bit with friends and learn something. So that's what we're doing tonight. So it's also unique that we're having the opportunity to taste something that's brand new. Okay, and that just by pure luck, I scheduled you for now. And then I saw the email, then I saw the post on Facebook. They have the new Bottled in Bond. So can you first tell us what the significance of Bottled in Bond is with respect to bottling?
Sure. So what's interesting about Bottled in Bond is in 1897, the Bottled in Bond Act was passed. Essentially, it was the first food safety law ever passed in the United States, and it was about booze.
Nice.
So to give you an appreciation for the priorities that our sort of forefathers were dealing with, but the reason was there was a lot of nonsense going on back then. There was whiskey that was just being screwed around with. Whether it was turpentine or tobacco spit or things that I could never even imagine were being done to stretch out stuff to essentially make it more profitable for the manufacturer or the rectifier or whoever was trying to sell it. And it was recognized that not only was that unethical, it was unsafe.
Okay.
And so this Bottled in Bond Act was a way to give the consumer of a Bottled in Bond product security in knowing and understanding exactly what was going to be in that bottle.
Okay.
So what does that mean? So a Bottled in Bond bourbon specifically has to meet all the requirements for bourbon first and foremost. Number one, made in the United States. Number two, made with 51% corn, distilled at or below 160 proof, barreled and charred new American white oak barrels at or below 125 proof. To call it a straight bourbon, it has to be at least 2 years old. Now, to have a Bottled in Bond bourbon, it has to be all of those things, plus
4
at
years,
least
right?
4 years old, distilled at the same distillery, by the same distiller, in the same distilling season, and barreled at 100 proof, or I should say, and bottled at 100 proof.
Okay.
And by the way, the distilling season is January 1 through the last day of June, July 1 through the last day of December.
Okay.
And,
So a bottled and bond, though, can be older than 4 years, of course.
can be older than 4
Okay,
years.
right.
Can be,
Right.
and
Because I think Heaven Hill has a 7-year one, I think, is what they have.
And the bond part of it means that it has to have been aged in a federally bonded warehouse. And so that part of it often is misunderstood. If you have a functional and operational distillery today and have barrels in storage, you have a federally bonded warehouse. What that means is that we essentially buy an insurance policy with the federal government that if my place blows up, we have a bond against all the tax liability of the whiskey that's in there. Back up until the 80s, if you had a distillery, there was actually a revenuer. There was somebody that was in the distillery keeping track of all the product going in and out. The Reagan administration essentially decentralized that reporting system, and now we still have to report, but instead of having somebody in our facility to supervise us, we are audited or have the ability to be audited at any given time, and have been and will be again.
Okay, so one thing that's interesting to me here is that I'm seeing more and more bottled and bond product on the shelves. It seems to be something that is coming back in vogue a little bit. A few years ago, I didn't see much, but now I'm starting to see more. Is this a standard that you think more distilleries are going to be adopting?
I can tell you it's a standard that we will be adopting.
Okay.
And so for us, it's a real milestone because, I'll take a moment to give the group a little bit of context of who we are and where we came from. So again, thank you for the introduction. And just a little side note, my last name is pronounced Nick Nagele, and I have been called way worse today. So just in case, no, everyone gets it
My
wrong.
apologies.
Including my grandma. So
got it.
So I'm Nick Nagele. I'm one of the co-founders here at Whiskey Acres, along with my two business partners, Jim and Jamie Walter. The three of us make up the founding team of Whiskey Acres. And we have Jim and Jamie, their family has a farm in DeKalb, Illinois, that they have been running since the 1930s. My family has a farm about 100 miles downstate from Chicago that we've been on for 5 generations as well. So Whiskey Acres, for the three of us, was very much about 3 farmers making whiskey, and very specifically bourbon, from the high quality grain that we've been growing for 5 generations. And
so corn is the primary grain that's on the farms. Is that what you're trying to say?
So we mostly grow corn. We grow soybeans as a rotational crop, and we also grow wheat and rye, and as of this year, grow our own barley as well.
Barley. I see what's coming.
and so all those details are important. We grow this. We don't source grain from anybody else. And so with that in mind, you know what else we don't source is whiskey.
Right.
And so we incorporated in 2013. We've been in full scale production since 2014, and we have made the sort of the unwritten, and somewhere I'm sure it is written down, we have made the policy that we will not source grain. We will not source whiskey to make our business viable. And
so are you saying from the very beginning, you never sourced anything? All the juice was produced by you?
Forever.
Very nice.
Not a drop of anything. But and for full disclosure, there's been no juice. We have bought barley from a local supplier. Sure. But that's the extent of it.
Right. Now, one thing I saw on your website was the term estate grains. Okay, I've seen that on your website. Well, what does that actually mean?
We draw a parallel to the way we run our distillery to the way an estate winery would run their vineyard. So it's very, if you go to a winery, it's very common that it's a retail shop selling wine that somebody else made from grapes that somebody else grew. If you go to an estate vineyard, or in our case, an estate distillery, we are making and selling product from the grains that we've grown, in many cases less than a half a mile away from where we're sitting or distilling it. So the control of the process that we have, the ability to integrate our multiple generations of farming ingenuity and integrity into the grain product that ultimately becomes the distilled product, we think is very important. And quite frankly, it touches consumers in a very positive marketing way, but if not more importantly, it makes for a high quality spirit.
Got it. So did you have to learn how to distill from the ground up? I mean, Obviously, it's a family of farmers, and your partners are also farmers. Did anybody come to this with a distilling background? So how did you do that? How did you learn that?
It was a dumb idea on our so Jim, Jamie, and I all actually coincidentally all are University of Illinois alumni. And Jim has a degree in engineering. Jamie actually has a degree in law, and I have a degree in marketing communications. So we have three very different pillars of expertise, so to speak, but none of us have made a damn drop of whiskey in our entire lives. And we recognize that as a very substantial liability in starting a distillery. And we eventually were able to, and when I say eventually, I mean after months, literal months of reaching out, got a hold of and connected with Dave Pickerell. And many of you will know Dave as the former master distiller at Maker's Mark. You know, rest in peace, Dave. He passed away a couple of years ago, but Dave left Maker's Mark to help, I like to say, help knuckleheads like us turn from aspirational to functional distilleries. And so we hired Dave to really ground truth our business plan and make sure that the equipment that we were looking at and planning to buy was in alignment with what our near-term, mid-term, and long-term production goals were. Also to make sure that we were sizing and pricing things correctly, and to really give us the bookends in techniques for distilling. We did not hire Dave to teach us how to make Maker's Mark. We hired Dave to teach us how to utilize the equipment, the resources, whether it's the grain, the heating and cooling elements. We're sitting on top of a limestone aquifer out here. So to utilize the resources that we uniquely have at our location to make the best damn stuff possible.
Right, and you're in DeKalb, right? That's where you are. It's DeKalb.
60 miles straight west of Chicago. Yep.
Very nice. Are you able to have tours right now? What's going on with your distillery under COVID?
Right now, no tours.
Okay.
So in January, I should say, of 2019, we opened up a brand new visitor center that was very much meant to host and accommodate people coming on tours. We have chosen to keep that closed and converted our outdoor space into what we call a whiskey garden. And so
nice.
We would literally give hundreds of tours on a weekend. We're not giving any tours now, but we've just created a really nice, welcoming, farm-based estate distillery, whiskey garden for folks to come and enjoy the breeze, have a sip, get out of their house. We've got seating for about 130, 140 people. There's not a chair closer than 15 feet from one set of tables to the next. Nice. And as we get into the fall, I think we're expecting delivery on 10 or 15 fire pits the third week of September. So that we're going to put a program together where we can rent out fire pits for a couple hour sessions and really just make it feel like home.
Yeah, you might have seen on Facebook that I sometimes, actually not sometimes, I'm in front of my fire pit a lot. So, drinking whiskey, having a great time. It's a good thing to do. So actually, I don't know if you heard, but this might justify your strategy right now. Today, the Blom brothers posted that there was a COVID case at their distillery. And they, so they just had to shut down all their tours that they had scheduled. They're refunding, they're refunding the tickets and all that stuff. So hopefully everybody's going to be okay. I think it was one staff member there, but that sort of justifies your case, for not doing it right now.
We could be open, but we don't know that we should be open. Yeah. If I go back to, I don't remember, sometime in June or early July, when Illinois transitioned from phase 3 to phase 4, it actually, that Friday coincided with a rainy Friday. And so we opened up our indoor space, and from like a financial standpoint, I think we broke even that day. But from like an emotional standpoint, it was the most stressful day of being open for us and the team we've ever had. And follow that up with, on Monday morning, we came in and kind of had our Monday morning sit around, and I got a headline somewhere that said something like, Dr. Fauci says drinking indoors is the most dangerous thing you can do.
Right. Thanks, man. Thank you. Yeah. We appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we huddled up and said, you know what, we are, we're going to make this work. Okay. If the mother nature doesn't want us to be outside, we're not going to be open. Okay. And we're going to do what's safe and sane for our team and customers. Okay.
So let's talk whiskey. Okay, so I have in front of me, I have 2 of your bottles. So in addition to the bottled in bond, which I'm enjoying very much, it's rich. I got some heat off of it. I'm getting some cinnamon, some apples, some dark cherry, some good spice. It's just delicious. I also have here as I mentioned to you before, the bottle 170, which is from Bourbon Women. Okay, it was your Bourbon Women, your bottle.
Let me interrupt. Paul, take that, go like this, lift it straight up. Turn and lift straight up. Don't watch it.
Oh, God, this is sad to watch. We're recording this, Paul. Paul, we're recording this. Okay.
I'm gonna pin the video just so we can get this all on.
Okay. So talk to me here. So you and I actually met at Bourbon Women. Okay, you and I met at Bourbon Women. I came up to you, we chatted. I told you I have a group of friends who gets together and does stuff. Brett Pontani actually told me about this bottle, told me it was delicious. So tell me about the difference between bottle 170 and, of course, the ABV. This is 60.1%. But is there any difference in the mash bills and what's going into producing the juice that's in these two different bottles?
So the mash bill, good job, Paul. The mash bill question is, I'm proud to tell you that the recipe that we're using, the mash bill we're using today, is the exact mash bill that we did on day one with Dave Pickerel in December of 2014. So mash bill has not changed in any way, shape, or form.
So in other words, what's different is the aging and, of course, the different years of the grains, right? Because the grain's a little bit different each year, right?
Yep. So there's a few things. Aging is the easiest one to understand. That okay, your whiskey's 2 years old versus 4 years old. It's a numerical value you can give it some credence.
Right.
The harvest year is just as important. That there's going to be some grain variability. It's not. I don't want to oversell it. If I'm growing the same type of corn in 2018 versus 2019, there's going to be some quality differences, but the output is going to be basically the same. It's not quite as different as wine. A forest fire, as far as we know today, does not affect the way our corn tastes when it's distilled.
Right, but the amount of rain that you get would affect it every year, correct?
Yep. So you're going to have differences in quality, but the corn is not going to have a smoky flavor because there was a fire down the road, so to speak. Then I think the most important, now there's two things that are important. I think one is just the fact that what you're drinking there is 3 years old. We've become better distillers since then.
I would hope so.
We have learned a lot more. And then just as importantly is the fact that what you're drinking there and what we were releasing every year, we have more barrels to choose from. So what you have there is a single barrel pick. So you're getting just a snapshot of a single barrel. I drank myself dry of our standard bourbon, but I did make it into a lawn candle. So our straight. So this is what a bourbon bottle looks like, filled with citronella oil.
Nice.
And so this is our straight bourbon. This up until Bottle and Bond has been our sort of standard bourbon offering. And so if you buy a bottle of that today, you're getting 3-year-old 25-gallon barrel whiskey and 4-year-old 53-gallon barrel whiskey, and just depends on how they taste out as to what blend goes in there. And our head distiller Rob Wallace is the nose and the palate behind those blend decisions. Transition from that into Bottle and Bond. From the beginning, we have essentially identified a set of barrels that we really liked and let them cook to get to the minimum standards for Bottle and Bond. And if I remember right, I think this was 4 years, 268 days old for this particular release. Yeah. So I've given you a lot of answers to your single question.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
The recipe's the same. The age is different. The amount of barrels I have to blend with is different. Our knowledge set is different. And
but everything you said there makes sense, though, because you can compare from one year to the next. You can obviously learn from year to the next, and you should. And if you know that you're dealing with essentially the same mix every year, then it's a control. It's a whole science thing. That way you can say, well, this year maybe we're going to age it in a Lafroig cask for a year or something like that. Like, do you do something different? It's the same underlying juice, but then you can do something else with it. And you mentioned the word smoke before. So obviously corn, when it's grown, there's nothing smoked. Have you ever thought of adding some smoke to your process?
So I don't know if any of you guys have seen these, but this is what we call our artisan series.
Okay.
So we utilize these to to try things out at small scales through the front door of our visitor center. And regarding smoke, we released something a couple of years ago that was bourbon whiskey made with applewood smoked malt.
Oh,
So
nice.
our standard mash bill is 75% corn, 10% or 15% wheat, 10% distiller's malt. In this case, instead of using the distiller's malt, we used applewood smoked malt.
Nice.
It was great.
Nice.
It was great. We did another one that was chocolate malt, and that was really good as well. We are working on. So I mentioned earlier that we're growing our own barley. We're having that malted, but we're exploring two different ways to smoke that. One is we're looking at utilizing corn stover to smoke some of that to make something very, very unique.
What was that word you used? Corn what?
Corn stover. Corn stover. Stalks. Corn stalks.
Corn stalks. Okay,
yep,
got it.
Yep.
Right.
And the second part is there's a farm half a mile away from the distillery that we have that has a peat bug. And so we're gonna look into taking a backhoe out there and harvesting some of our own peat and drying it to smoke.
Oh, very nice.
And to be very, very upfront with you, those are going to be just like fun little projects.
Sure.
We're not, our our mainstay product is going to be, bourbon and rye whiskey, but we're going to play.
Right. And you did mention that you are starting to grow the barley, of course. Would you ever consider doing like an American single malt, which we've started to see more and more of here in the country?
Not only consider it, we've done it already.
Okay.
So I mentioned earlier, my dad and I have a farm. My dad grew some barley 2-3 springs ago. We harvested it, had it malted, and I think we have 2.5-year-old American single malt right now.
Nice. So, now, where is that on the shelves?
It's in a barrel.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So that's why I haven't seen it yet. So it's in a barrel, right? Got it. Because I mean, it's funny. Many of us here are regulars at Binny's and Warehouse Liquors, and you know that you're a regular when they notice you when you're wearing a mask that covers you up to here. It's like, and it's like, and the people who recognize you, it's not just the manager. It's like other people recognize you too. And so I'm very familiar with what's on the shelves, and I never remembered seeing a single malt from your company. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to open it up here to other people. By the way, I'm continually enjoying this bottled and bond. I'm getting a little bit of like sweetness, almost like a maple syrup to it. It's really, it's delicious, and it has, it lasts, it lingers in the mouth in a nice way. I'm very much enjoying it. But you did mention the word single cask, and that's what this is. It's a single cask here. So when a group like Bourbon Women, which is very large, and they have great events, when they have an event and they're looking for a single cask, so do they work with with Binny's and then with you? Like, how does that process work to go from your distillery to a single cask bottle for an event?
So if I recall correctly, and I'll be very transparent about this, I think Bourbon, I think we were their second choice. I think is how this worked out. And I don't remember the company, but they reached out to a big one in Kentucky and said, we need a single barrel. We'd like to do a single barrel selection, and here's our date. And that mountain of a company couldn't turn the boat quickly enough to make it work. Jeez. And so our friends at Binny's, who have had just this wonderful working relationship with, knows me and the team, and knew that we were having some product come of age, and suggested they reach out to me and us and see if we could do it. So they reached out, and if I recall right, I pulled half a dozen samples, and then I think the Bourbon Women had a meeting and had one of those wonderful tasting sessions, and they were ecstatic about it, picked something, and then the most fun part was they came out and actually bottled it with us.
Nice.
And so they got the whole farm at night sort of experience, and I think we were making whiskey that evening as well, and to me that's the best part about this is really getting to know the folks who are enjoying our product after it leaves the space, and then getting to go into a Bourbon Women event and meet somebody like you and find myself here 3 or 4 years later.
And, it's funny because even though you and I met then, the person who recommended that I contact you about the interview, even though, of course, you were on my list because I know, I have a whole list of all these people I want to approach, was our friend Marty Duffy, who,
Where's he at anyway?
he was our second interviewee, I think. I think he was our second interviewee. Our first one was Lou Bryson. We had Lou, and, he's just a big character. Yeah, the beard, Lou with the beard, and we had Monique Houston. We've had Brett Pontani. We've had a lot. We're having a lot of fun. But the thing that is driving me crazy about this, which is driving everybody crazy, is that originally I had scheduled 10 sessions, every 2 weeks, because I was hoping to God that the lockout would end, sometime this summer. And when I realized it wasn't ending, that's when I started with my second session of 10. And now I'm already scheduled up through December, number 19. And I'm hoping not to have to do this again after that, but we will continue in some shape or form, but not as frequently, because, this is a lot of work. And, hopefully when this thing is all over, we're all going to be out and about and having a great time. So we don't have time for Zoom meetings is what we really should be doing. Amen. So what I'm going to do right now, Eric, do you have any questions before we open it up to the general crew here?
One quick question relating to your artisan bottles. Are those only available from the distillery?
As you see here, the answer is almost yes. Okay, so what we do is we use the distillery as kind of a proving grounds, and if it goes well from a sales standpoint, and more importantly, if it goes well from a grain growing, transitioning, and distilling standpoint, then we promote it. And so we're actually in the process right now of developing a 750 milliliter, I call it the varsity squad of the artisan series, that will transition from these little guys into a made for prime time representation of this that will be available at the distillery and into distribution. And if I recall right, I think we've got a December 13th or 18th release of our first Varsity Squad Artisan Series, which is blue popcorn bourbon. So it's bourbon that is made from blue popcorn. So this is not the Balcones blue corn.
Right. I've had the Balcones blue corn.
Yeah.
I've had that, yeah.
Take this ear of corn, put it in the microwave, go to a movie. Or take this ear of corn, grind it up, distill it, make bourbon out of it. And this goes, I asked Dave Pickerel before he passed away, how do you make bourbon from popcorn? And his response was, I'm not sure. I don't think it's ever been done before. Challenge accepted. And we have a very good friend who has a popcorn farm in Western Illinois. I reached out to him and said, can you give me some seed? A week later, it was in the ground, and we did a single batch of it that year. It was wonderful. And we went from like year one of, I think we did a barrel, to year three, I think we did 40 or 50 barrels. And so December, you'll find, the bottle design isn't exactly there. And we're literally this week working on, it's going to be overproof. And we're looking for where it needs to land, somewhere between 105 and 95 and 107 is where that's going to land. I will give you one other, in this bottle, though, when I said almost exclusively, in this bottle type here, you will see in distribution in September, bourbon whiskey finished in maple syrup casks. And so we take we take freshly emptied bourbon barrels, send them down to a place called Funk's Grove Maple Syrup Farm down by Bloomington, Illinois, and send some other ones up to, and by the way, that's north, just in case you're, and send them up to Sugar Hill Sugar Bush in Wausau, Wisconsin, and they age their maple syrup in those barrels. Then the moment they empty the syrup, they send them back to us. We take bourbon that's ready to go into a bottle, and instead of bottling it, we finish it in these maple syrup casks, and it's there for about a year. And these
really
casks
that long, fascinating.
And it goes in cask strength too. So I think this one is like 117 proof or something like that. Wow. So you get this wonderful, the maple sweetness, but it's bourbon, my friend.
Because sometimes I've had things like that where they were too sweet for me. It was too much of a syrup and less of a whiskey. And that sounds like the opposite of what this will be.
Not going to happen with this one, my friend.
I like your smile there. I like that. You know, it's sort of like an evil grin.
You said September on that?
Yeah, I third-ish week of September. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey,
Nice.
that sounds like a good, it's funny. Evan just posted here. He said, sounds good with pancakes. Yeah. A cask strength breakfast whiskey. That's just freaking awesome. Love that idea.
And there's a syrup to go with it too.
Of course there is. Of course there is. So, Eric, I'm going to be quiet now. Why don't you moderate the questions? If anybody has a question, I just want to remind everybody that you have to unmute yourselves. That's the new way that Zoom is doing things. So, Eric, please take it away. And if there aren't any questions, I've got several others prepared.
Anybody
actually,
have a question?
Okay. And by the way, those of you who've been drinking the bottled in bond, if you can also tell us, what you're getting out of it as well. But I see Paul's raising his hand.
Yeah. And then Michael Nolan will be next.
Okay.
Well, I actually have a number of questions, so I'll defer to Michael to begin with.
Okay. Nolan, take it away.
I was going to say the same thing. I got a number of questions.
I was good. Both of you only ask questions in pairs.
Right. Okay, that's fair enough. Nick, you said, I'm curious, what's your mash bill for the bourbon?
75% corn, 15% soft red winter wheat, and 10% malted barley.
Okay, so you're not using any rye in your bourbon mash bill. So that's interesting.
Correct.
Okay. The second thing is more of I really come out of an Irish Scottish whiskey background, and I'm very familiar with some distilleries that are doing something very similar to what you're doing in Scotland, Killoman, where they have their own farm. They're using their own grain. They're doing the entire process in-house, right up to bottling. In Ireland, Waterford Distillery. In the U.S., probably similar to this, but not quite the same. But why aren't you talking more, that end of the business up more about, in a sense, the terroir of this is all ours, all on our, like you start out saying, all the grain comes from our farms.
If I haven't been clear about that, it's because I've been bad at giving our talking points this evening. Because I
was going to say tonight, I'm not really, this is the first whiskey I've had of yours, so I'm also not as familiar with your distillery. You did say that right away, but I figured that'd be like what you would be really all over.
Well, so then again, it's purely because I've had a miss here. Because that is the number one thing that differentiates us from 99.9% of every other distillery in the United States and the planet, is the fact that we have total control of that process from seed to spirit. And so, I can speak a little bit to the terroir, but I think what's more important is the team and the process and the management that goes into the planning ahead of how we rotate crops, of what hybrids of corn are going to be planted from one year to the next, to make sure, we're talking on Tuesday, we had an hour-long meeting on Tuesday about what we're going to be planting next May that's going to become a product that we're going to be releasing in 2026. So the farm is really kind of the foundation for everything that we do, that really just adds about a year and a half more complexity in the planning that we have to do against it. And I'm not sure if I said this with this group or not, but the phrase "all corn is not created equal" is absolutely true. If I put on my farmer hat, if I'm making a decision on what I'm going to plant, the driver of that decision is based off of how many bushels per acre I can get in a given amount of space in a growing season, because I make my money selling bushels of corn against commodity price of that bushel of corn. And if I put my distiller hat on, quite honestly, I can care a little bit less about bushels per acre, and it's more about quality. It's, will this particular hybrid of corn or variety of corn have better starch content, have better test weight, have better disease resistance, that will give me a cleaner fermentation that will subsequently give me a better, cleaner distillation. And so I can sacrifice yield. I can farmer hat be damned and focus on looking for varieties that will give me the highest grain quality possible. And so to your point, Michael, absolutely, the farm is imperative to the differentiation and the high quality that we proudly output.
Nice. Very good. Michael, did he answer your question?
Yeah, I was, isn't yield though, once you've, not talking about farming yield, but the yield you're getting off your mash, isn't that important? And then how does that affect how you're looking at the grain that you're taking out of the ground?
I mean, so if you're looking at in terms of, call it bottles of alcohol per pound of grain, so to speak, is that what you mean
Well,
in terms of yield?
How much yield in the sense of when you're distilling, how much spirit you're getting off of your runs?
Sure. So that is, you know, that's a different hat to wear, so to speak, and that from one variety of corn to the next, I can see a 10 to 20% increase or decrease in output. But what I'm proud to tell you is that we have found what we consider to be sort of the holy grail of something that tastes good and yields well. So we can grow it, it tastes good, and when we distill it, it makes a more than reasonable amount of whiskey per pound, so to speak. And I'm proud that in everything we do, we're very transparent about what we do and how we do it. That and a couple other corn varieties are the only secrets we keep to ourselves. So don't ask that one.
Very nice.
Oh, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
let's go on. I think, Paul, can you ask one or two of your questions without getting too geeked out on us here, buddy?
Yeah, I can start off real simple, actually. How's Lundine's doing?
They're great. They're great. They're a good partner and a lot of fun.
Fantastic. That was the softball.
All right.
So actually, the second one I think I probably shouldn't ask and move on to the third because you kind of spoke to it. But the point was, you know, kind of specialty grains that you end up using, especially, you know, experimentation with corn varieties, etc. There aren't too many like farm to bottle places around. And in fact, you know, the one other local regional player that does some things like that doesn't distill on premises, even though they grow, you know, pretty much all of their grain. And their big thing is a particular variety of heirloom red corn that they use. So I guess if I'm understanding correctly, that answer to the whole, you know, varieties of corn used in the mash bill is not something that you're that keen on answering. That's the secret sauce, right?
I'm not going to tell you that.
All right. What about, and I think for the barley you mentioned, you know, just standard brewer's barley, right?
I know we use a distiller's malt, a very
Distiller's
specific,
malt,
yeah, we get a distiller's malt out of from Breese, but that is one thing that we will be transitioning. We grew several acres of our own malt this year, and we're going to have it malted with the intention. You know, we're gonna trial it in to see if we can make it act like the malt that we were sourcing,
Mm-hmm.
and if we can't, then that entire crop is going to go towards American single malt.
Gotcha. Effectively, when I was first drinking the whiskey, I got kind of like those chocolatey notes that I get from places that use, you know, a little bit of chocolate malted barley, which is not necessarily common in distillation, but there are some usages of, you know, non-standard, you know, maltings. And so that's kind of where the curiosity came from that. So is it going to still be like a regular 2-row, 6-row standard grist type grain, or are you going to play around with the maltings on some of that stuff for the standard bourbon?
When we play with the grain, it's going to be on corn. So we have a rye variety that we've been growing for the last 6 years. We have a wheat variety that we've been growing for the last 6 years. We have a barley variety that we will be on year number 2. But in the last 6 years, we've probably grown 80 to 100 different varieties of corn.
Wow.
So we're in DeKalb, you know, where hybrid seed corn was invented,
Mm-hmm.
where DeKalb corn was created, and we know our lane. And our lane is being experts at corn. We have found a way to consistently grow high quality small grains, and we're not gonna fool with it.
Got it. Eric, who else has some questions? Eric, I think.
I haven't seen anybody else.
Okay, Lynn, I think Lynn had a question. Lynn, can you unmute yourself, please? Something about a rye?
Yeah, tell me a bit more about your rye whiskey and actually the rye. And I actually have a separate question about the bottled in bond bourbon. I'm getting some rather spicy notes, and you said there's no rye in the mash bill. So is that from the wheat? So two very different questions.
So spice, I think you're getting wood spice. I think you're getting wood spice from the barrels is what there's the wheat is really in there as a complementary grain to the corn that will at most give it sweetness, and at very least just let the corn, those butterscotch notes of the corn shine through. Anything you're getting in our bourbon that you would call spicy is contributions from the barrel.
I definitely got woody notes when I first opened that bottle, the bottled in bond. So on to your rye whiskey, which I didn't buy, but I'm probably going to go back to Benny's tomorrow and get. Tell me about it.
So Jim, Jamie, and I, 6 years ago, in so many words, says we don't like rye whiskey. Like collectively, we as an ownership team don't like rye whiskey. But also, projecting out, recognize that rye is something that needs to be part of our portfolio. So this goes back to working with Dave. As we had that conversation, and we're able to identify a very particular variety of rye that gives the spirit a much more vanilla forward flavor, lots of fruity notes, and does not have that traditional rye hard spice. So our rye recipe is 75% rye, 25% corn. We call it a bourbon drinker's rye. I last week I got a gold medal from the San Francisco World Spirits Competition with this thing in the mail. So I'm confident that that it may not be what you typically drink, Lynn, but if you like bourbon, you will love this rye. And I'll take a moment here to kind of give you a little bit of farm information as well. As farmers in the United States, when we grow rye grain, we're generally growing it as a cover crop to manage nutrient runoff and erosion. So as a result of that, when we go shopping for rye seed, we have one choice. It's called rye seed. There's no genetic background in it. We're buying something that is genetically known as rye. However, in Canada, rye is much more of a cash crop, and I can literally open up a seed catalog and pick out different genetics that have different agronomic characteristics, that have different flavor profiles. So we worked on that with Dave and found a farmer friend who lives on the Minnesota-Canadian border. He got us this rye variety from Canada 6 years ago that we now grow every year. That is the foundation for our rye whiskey. It is not traditional, and we're damn proud of that. Anybody can make an overly spicy rye. We make something that's subtly sweet, has a kind of a white pepper finish, and really is nice to drink. And if you make it to Benny's tomorrow, Lynn, if you don't like it, I'll buy it back from you.
Wow.
Well, this is
Very
recorded.
nice. Are there any other questions?
That is quite a challenge, because I do like my spicy rye, and I do like my farm to table ryes from Minnesota. And they are spicy, but it's typically a rye that's grown in Canada. It's kind of short, close to the ground, does well in cold temperatures, which I suspect is not at all the case in DeKalb.
It is. We did grow a very, very specifically a short statured rye so that it can survive the winds and the agronomic conditions we have here, and it is not meant for cold weather. I'll buy it back, but I don't intend to. I will if I need to, but I don't plan to.
You know what? I'm even going to say, Lynn, before you have him buy it back, let me try it too. So we can figure.
Yeah, I'll try
Yeah,
that as well.
we've got a good community here. So
We'll pass the
yeah, I'll
bottle
pass it
around.
down. So out of respect for your time, I said that we'd be going for about 45 minutes or so, and that's where we are right now. So what I want everybody to do right now is this: if you can pour yourselves a dram, and I'd like everybody to unmute yourself, please. And I'd like everybody to raise a glass. Cheers to our special guest, Nick Nagele, pronounced
Thank you,
correctly
Nick.
this time. Nick Nagele, everybody say cheers. Thank you, Nick.
Cheers,
Thank you.
thank you,
Cheers.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Woo.
I want you guys to get Paul my email address because I can see questions oozing out of his ears, and I'm happy.
Like I could
Happy
be
to,
on here for another hour. I'm cool with that.
Oh, we know you could. We know you could.
No,
It's great.
Guys, don't give my cell phone, my email.
No problem. No problem. Email's fine. And by the way, for those of you who are on Facebook, Nick is on Facebook, and he is a member of of our little whiskey group on Facebook. So he does sometimes respond to things. You can also contact him there. But yes, I do have his email address. And just one other thing here before we finish up. So Nick, just want to let you know that when we stop recording, if you want to stay around, feel free to do so because a bunch of us usually hang around for a little bit of an after party, but we don't record it because why? We want to be, it's better that way. But if you have to go, that's fine too. But I just want to say thank you very much. We'll really look forward to when we can visit the distillery, when we can have tours, we can do these things in person. Zoom is great. It's helped us all stay in connection with one another, but it's nothing like the interpersonal reaction that you get when you're standing across the table from somebody, pouring them something, and you just see the look on their face and you see how it is. And I'm enjoying this. I really enjoy the whiskey.
This is very good.
I will stick around and I'm gonna pull from you guys for a few minutes because we released this last Friday. Just if you